So before I get started, I just wanted to thank Nuffield and my sponsor, the GRDC, for backing me into my scholarship. It has been such an amazing, eye-opening experience and certainly would not be possible without their support. Thank you. The basis of my studies took me primarily to the USA and England, where I met some awesome people, too many to thank really, but there's a few in particular. So the crew at the Noble Institute in Ardmore, Oklahoma, who went above and beyond accommodating, showing myself and my family around their incredible facility. Mr. and Mrs. Kinder from Kinder Farms, my eldest son Archie, who's 5 years old at the time, laid claim to Mrs. Kinder, calling her his American grandma. So Grant Powell from England, who vacated his house in North Leach, just so me and my family could live there. And finally, I really must thank Hertz Dallas, the rent-a-car company who took my wife and kids and I all the way from Dallas to North Carolina, Western Illinois and back down to Kansas City over the course of around 3 weeks. My study topic led me to learn quite a bit about soil biology, and I can assure you I learned quite a lot about just biology in general from the back seat of the car by the end of that trip, particularly after the boys spilled an entire carton of milk in the back footwell on the first day and leaving the car parked out in 40+ degree heat in car parks. It was an experience, I can tell you. On a serious note though, I would like to thank my wife Ali, who's the most amazing person I've ever had the privilege of knowing. Her endless effort in helping me with my studies and my report writing, she's the brains behind our operation, that's for sure. And my boys, who were also with me and here together with my mum. So I've got a video here that I'm just going to play. It's a little bit about our business, bit of farming and stuff. My family and I own and run a 21,000 acre cattle and cropping operation on the Western Darling Downs. The property has been in my family for 3 generations. The whole point of my scholarship was to try to find the information to help rebuild our soils for the future generations of my family. Since taking over the management of our cropping sector in 2006, after the passing of my father, I've been rapidly taking the shift towards zero-till and regenerative agriculture, with soil health being the main focus. When I first started out on my Nuffield Scholarship, my intention was to research ways of improving soil carbon in dryland farming operations. But the information that I found uncovered so much more than that. What my studies have taught me is that soil is so much more complex than even the world's leading soil scientists can understand. Looking at improving just one element of soil is futile. Total soil health quickly became the focus of my research through mimicking the fine balancing act of nature. Through my studies, I found that there were 3 key factors impacting on the soil ecosystem: climatic conditions, ground cover and biodiversity. It is where these 3 factors overlap that you will find optimal soil health. While we cannot control the weather, we can manage other areas of ground cover and biodiversity through modern farming practices such as zero-till and multi-species cover cropping, enabling agricultural businesses to capitalise on good seasons, improving soil function efficiency during periods of extreme weather, and sustaining soil integrity for the long term. You can see here a list of benefits from maintaining adequate ground cover: weed suppression, erosion prevention, increased soil organic matter, improved water infiltration and moisture retention, stabilisation of soil aggregates. This is a great example of thatched ground cover I saw in a corn crop at a field day in North Carolina. This farm, since adopting cover crops, has gone on to top the yields in the area, with the ground cover assisting infiltrating the high rainfall. In North Carolina, with 52 inches of rainfall, really helped keep the water in the soil. Biodiversity helps the balance both of bacteria and fungal ratios and the carbon-nitrogen ratios. It improves the efficiency of the carbon-nutrient cycling process, increases microbial activity, and generally promotes synergy between all soil elements. On our visit to Kinder Farms in Oklahoma, the importance of soil biology and microbial activity became very clear. Mr. Kinder showed me images of 2 of his paddocks side by side. One had been treated with more nitrogen than the crop could possibly use, yet there was distinct taller tufts of wheat scattered throughout the paddock. He went on to explain that the taller areas occurred where there was manure from having cattle on the paddock a few months before. So even with a saturated amount of nitrogen and the biology and microbial activity from the added manure had the wheat tufts easily 10 centimetres taller, darker and generally more healthy. He performed comparison soil tests between the manure clumps and the other areas, only to find the same nitrogen and phosphorus levels in both. The only difference, in his opinion, was the biology. His findings were backed up further by soil testing by renowned soil scientist Rick Haney at the USDA. We can utilise both concepts of ground cover and biodiversity through multi-species cover crops to influence the environment below the soil surface, encouraging the soil to harbour the crucial bacteria required to release optimal levels of plant-available nutrients. The opportunity to sit and talk openly with some of the world's leading soil gurus ahead of the 4th annual Southern Soil Health Field Day in North Carolina was a humbling experience. Gabe Brown is undeniably a game changer in the field of regenerative agriculture. His farm in North Dakota has proven the theories that I'm talking about here today, and it's a real credit to him and his family, and very much worth a look if you ever get the chance. Despite making up only 2 to 10% of total soil mass, without organic matter, soil is dead. Undoubtedly, restoring and maintaining soil organic matter must become a priority in sustainable agriculture. Integrating multi-species cover crops is one proven method of replenishing soil organic matter, as evidenced by replicated trial data from Brown's farm. This showed an impressive improvement in soil organic matter levels following several consecutive years of multi-species cover cropping, where the organic matter increased from a mere 1.2% to an amazing 6.7%. Higher soil organic matter levels are also closely linked to increased moisture retention. Mr. Brown indicated that in his experience, he found the best results in soil health improvement occurred when a minimum of 8 species of plants were used in a cover crop. Incorporating a mix of plants' functional groups, cereals, grasses, legumes and brassicas, this photo shows, well it did show, a mixed species cover crop. You can see on this second image from Overbury Farms in England, managed by Jake Freestone, where they have been incorporating multi-species covers for a number of years. The soil is very much alive, with earthworms and all. And they have subsequently begun to see increases in yield on their cash crops. Maintaining adequate levels of carbon, nitrogen, water, microbial activity, mycorrhizal fungi and bacteria, managing soil structure, keeping cover on the ground, all these things are integral to the longevity of the soil and its future productivity. And there is no one magic input that can fix depleted soils. There is just a whole host of activities and relationships performed when living plants are actively growing within soil. And it is these interactions which actually fix soil health. As Rick Haney says, plants fix soil. Working these findings into broadacre dryland farming arrangements for the sake of future sustainability is both necessary and ambitious, but definitely attainable. It is my recommendation that the agricultural industry promote the adoption of multi-species cover cropping into rotational cropping schedules throughout the country. We have already begun integrating such crops into our existing cropping rotation in our business back home, and we're monitoring the changes with soil tests and documentation of photos. Here are some photos of our first cover crop consisting of sunflowers, millet, forage sorghum, dolichos, tillage radish, corn. We even threw some pumpkins in there for something different. Further research is yet required in order to find the perfect balance of species, varieties of legumes, cereals, grasses, etc. for localised climatic conditions around Australia. This information can then be collated and disseminated to the broader industry to aid in decision-making processes for individual cropping businesses. While I have no doubt that multi-species cover cropping will improve soil health, we need to consider the financial viability of implementing these practices. Long term, it would pay back through increased yields, decreased inputs and savings on pest, disease and weed management. However, currently, particularly in the scale of Aussie farms, it can be a costly exercise to get into. In this sense, I would suggest industry and or governing bodies to consider provisions for funding grants or subsidies in the initial cover crop season. Perhaps even a refundable tax offset on the necessary equipment like crimpers and rollers, which are not readily and affordably available within Australia. I'd also encourage individual businesses to consider alternative revenues from the cover crops, such as livestock grazing or short-term agistment. Just to finish, farming for the future has always been a passion of mine, and I hope that my research instills into everyone to drive a farm to farm better and think bigger. To farm with the next generation of farmers in mind and not just the bank account balance. I want to pass on my findings to my business and the wider agricultural community to continue to put practices in place that will emulate my findings. And I want to pass on to my boys so they too know how to farm respectfully in years to come. I want to contribute to the industry to new farmers with open minds and full hearts. Kenrick Riley, in his book titled Beef, described my father as having the habit of always looking forward. I believe this characteristic is crucial to our whole industry, and it is certainly one of my father's many admirable qualities that I truly hope that my two boys inherit. Thank you very much for your time.